now listening to episode 36, Starler Play Football with myself, Theo. As always, thank you very much for joining us. Now, before we get into the video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the videos. Let your friends know in the comments we are doing a Premier League preview for every single club. Yes, you heard right. We are going to be doing a Premier League preview for every single club. So if your club is in the Premier League, make sure you tune into your favorite club episode. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and all of that stuff. And also make sure you hit the audio version of the podcast as well. Make sure you go and listen to that on your commute as well, and let us know what you think again in the comments on that. But we're talking Brentford or Brentford. Now, Brentford are in a bit of a sticky situation because Brentford have just signed their record-breaking striker eagle Thiago from Club Bruges, who apparently has just come out recently that he's now going to miss a substantial amount of football for Brentford. Crazy when you think about it. They've got a conundrum on their hands as well, with Ivan Toney's contract also coming to an end in a year's time. So what do they do? What do they do? What did Brentford do? We're going to try and unpick all of that in this episode here. Let's talk about Thiago first. Obviously, Igor Thiago has been ruled out until late 2024 due to a knee injury. This has been reported by Jay Harris on The Athletic as well. Thiago, 23, suffered the problem during Brentford's 5-2 win over AFC Wimbledon on July 20th. And on Wednesday, the club announced the striker has undergone successful surgery. So it does mean that they are going to be without what seems to be the player that they brought in, possibly to replace Ivan Toney should he leave this summer. They've got a massive problem on their hands. Do they keep Ivan Toney, who scored 72 times apparently for the club, 141 appearances since joining from Peterborough? Do they sell him? 28 years of age, he's not getting any younger. There does seem to be a lot of the noise and the hype that was around Ivan Toney seems to have dropped off, and it seems now that a lot of the clubs that were interested in him, Chelsea were interested in him at one point. Arsenal, I think, were interested in him again at one point as well. Liverpool, I think, is another one that he potentially would have wanted. But at the time now, it looks like Ivan Toney might be staying at Brentford. But it does give a massive issue because obviously with Toney, his contract comes to an end next summer. You expect Brentford to at least want 50, 60, 70 million this summer for him. And are they willing to risk Ivan Toney leaving the club on a free next summer and not receiving any money? So it is a massive gamble. And we have to remember Ivan Toney, I know he's had the ban, he came back. He wasn't really in favour with Thomas Frank. I think it was Wissa who was playing a bit more football at the end of the season. Whether that was just a lack of fitness from Toney or whether there was a breakdown in relationship between manager and player. But it seems like Wissa was more preferred. And obviously now they've brought in Igor Thiago as well, another player that can play frontline and play as a number 9 for Brentford. It does look like Toney's slowly slipping down the pecking order at the community stadium. So I think they're going to have to try and decide very quickly whether they continue with Ivan Toney at Brentford or whether they're going to move him on. Now, Brentford, a team again that just looking at some of the stats here from last season, Brentford had a relatively decent season last season, albeit they probably could have done better. Wissa scored 12 goals for them, and Mbumo with a couple of goals and also 6 assists as well. But they did, in terms of the goals scored per game, they did finish 11th there, 1.47 goals per game. Goals conceded was 1.71. That was left them in 13th place in terms of goals conceded. They only managed 7 clean sheets, which left them in 12th in that market, and also they retained an average of 45% possession of the ball. The 13th worst club in the league. Now, Thomas Frank hasn't really done much business in terms of signings. They've obviously brought Igor Thiago from Club Bruges and Julian Eystone from Blue Devils. So they haven't really done much in terms of transfer activity, and they don't necessarily always do. They're quite a close close net in terms of their finances. They don't overspend if they don't need to. But I do think with Bournemouth, Brentford, I think they need to make sure that they, again, have a really good start to the season, ensure that, they have the right players, and as I said, keep them injury free. I think with Brentford, they've always sort of come into they managed to play very well against some of the bigger clubs, but I think some of the smaller clubs, very much like Bournemouth, will love the opportunity to go to their stadium and try and get 3 points off them. I think they have to be, again, hit the ground running at the start of the season. And I think tactically, I think Thomas Frank sets his team up very well tactically. From what I've been watching over the last couple of seasons, I just think with what you don't want is that massive headache and the cloud over the club, the next couple of weeks, especially with the window still open before the season starts, is the Ivan Toney saga. You want that sort of being dealt with as soon as possible, and you want it to be resolved. If he moves on and he goes to another club, you want that to happen as soon as possible, and they might be able to bring in another replacement, especially if Thiago isn't going to be fit until maybe the back end of this year. So they need to really get that resolved, I think, for me. I think they would struggle if they don't get that resolved. And I can't see Brentford not wanting to get some money for him as well. So let's just look at some of their fixtures, because obviously they start the season against Crystal Palace, which will be an interesting game, I think, for them. Then they move on then to Liverpool, second week in this new season, followed by Southampton, which will be tough for them. Man City, Tottenham, West Ham to come after that as well. They then play Wolves, United and Ipswich in October. And let's move over to the end of the season for them. Again, they're playing, Fulham, Ipswich, Wolves, United. I do worry about Brentford, because I think if they end up in the bottom half of that table, Christmas period, and they start slipping down that table, they could potentially end up, you don't want to be playing the likes of Wolves, the likes of Fulham, who might be there or thereabouts in that relegation battle. Ipswich might be in there. You don't want those 6-pointers to be coming at the back end of the season. You don't want to be playing Manchester United, the last month of the season, because it's just a difficult period of time. And like I said, if they pick up injuries on the way as well, and they don't have a fully fit squad, then, you don't want to be playing those sort of games at that point, because, those are the games where you have to get the 3 points. It's all or nothing. You have to go out there and win. And if you can't do that and you're slipping down the table, I think there'll be an expectation maybe from some of the fans to kick on. They'll see the likes of Brighton, Aston Villa getting into Europe. I think Brentford probably want that a little bit. I think they're a bit more ahead of where the previous recording that I did for Bournemouth. I think they're a bit more ahead of them in terms of the structure that they've got at the club and the way that they play as well under Thomas Frank. I think they have the capabilities of getting into the Conference League spaces for Brentford. But at the same time as well, I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the bottom half of the table come Christmas and then struggling to get out of a relegation, or they're in a relegation scrap come April, May. So it is a really, really difficult one with Brentford. They seem like a team that is either 50-50, really, really good, performing really well, scoring the goals, or they're struggling in front of goal, and then could be in the bottom half of the table. So it's a really difficult one. I feel like Thomas Frank has to get this right, though. I think if he doesn't, then I would possibly see Thomas Frank being one of the first managers. If things go against Brentford, I could see him being one of the first managers to be sacked from his role, because I still think Brentford have got a squad that should always be doing better than they always end up being. And as I said, tactically, I think Thomas Frank gets things spot on majority of the time. But when I've watched certain games with Brentford, they like I said, they struggle against some of the teams that they should be beating. But then they turn up against, a Chelsea, or they'll turn up against Liverpool, or turn up against Arsenal. Not to say they always get the 3 points, but they give them a game. And I think if they can do that consistently and carry on playing the way that they do against the top teams, against the lesser teams in the league, I think they have an opportunity, a very, very outside chance of getting into a Conference League position in the league, and then maybe go on to qualify for the Conference League. So I think they've got it all in there for them. I think if they can focus on what they need to do, Thomas Frank gets things right tactically on the pitch. They don't lose too many players to injuries. Obviously, they've lost a big one in their record signing already. But if they can keep the squad fit and raring to go, I can see Brentford possibly, if they do well, getting into the Conference League places come the end of the season. You know, Brighton did it, Villa in the Champions League, Newcastle have done it before in the Champions League as well. So there's nothing to say Brentford can't do that. I just think they've got to get that cloud of Ivan Toney away from the club. I personally don't think they can let him go for free, but we'll have to see how that one pans out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should Ivan Toney be sold this summer? Should Ivan Toney wait and receive more money from a potential suitor for him come next summer and leave Brentford on a free? Are Brentford able to get into the Conference League? And also, what signings do Brentford need in terms of this season to make sure that they continue as a Premier League club going forward as well? Personally, I do think they will have a good season. So I'm putting Brentford as 8th in the league. I think they might just miss out on the European spots, but I think they'll finish 8th. And that might actually be more realistic than them getting into Europe. So let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I will be back tomorrow for more previews on the Premier League. We will have the full team, I think, at some point this week. Kojo, Damon and Basil will be back on the channel as well, so make sure you tune in for all of those. Until then, subscribe, let me know your thoughts, like the videos, share the content, and we'll be back soon.